Well, this week has seen people in many parts of Australia virtually freezing. The air conditions have gone on, along with the electric and gas heaters, and I presume the electric blanket. Could that indulgence, for many years regarded, hasn't it been, as an entitlement, could that come to an end? Simply because of the inability of business and consumers to afford new energy, electricity or gas prices. It can never be surprising when an incoming government seeks to highlight the limitations of its predecessor. But in doing so, you must avoid talking down the nation's prospects. Nonetheless, in a piece written today by the Treasurer Jim Chalmers, he talks about inheriting major challenges in our economy. I referred to some of this earlier in the program, but I want to come to a more critical point. Interestingly, in his piece, Chalmers highlights the, quote, defining challenges, and he nominates inflation, real wages, and more than $1 trillion of debt, quote, chock full of rorts and waste, unquote. However, we wake today to learn also of surging fruit and vegetable prices, driven by flooding and the increased operating costs for farmers. Fresh produce has risen in price across the board, and we're told these price pressures, supermarket prices, will be in place at least until the end of the year. The first point to be made is that it's one thing to detail a litany of allegedly inherited woes, but Labor campaigned on the fact that it could provide cheaper everything. Well, away you go, Mr. Chalmers. But the one thing that Labor don't want to talk about, and you guessed it, and I've warned about it, energy prices. Well, now, add the freezing conditions and a shortage of coal at Araring, Australia's largest power station, and the new government's promise for cheaper everything is suddenly under siege. And to that, internationally, coal, gas and oil prices have hit multi-year highs on global markets due to sanctions on Russian exports. And on energy, the elephant in the room, we're in for a rocky road. What's been described as a perfect storm of energy price hikes, which will damage employers, business, households and the national economy. I'll come to coal in a moment. But boosting gas supplies. Now, Manufacturing Australia, which represents major gas users, has called on the federal government to invoke the Australian Domestic Gas Security Mechanism. Don't be intimidated by the title. I have argued for years that Australia should reserve an amount of gas that must be sold only on the domestic market. However, the Australian Petroleum Production and Exploration Association, which represents gas producers, opposes a gas reservation policy. They argue correctly, I suppose, that 90% of the gas market is covered by long-term contracts, and that's true, sold overseas. But we're now suffering the consequences of that. I have said that when licences are given for gas exploration, they should be given on the condition that a significant proportion of domestic gas is available for domestic consumption. That would be one answer to the energy crisis. Gas is our resource. It should be available to us at a domestic price, not an internationally inflated price.